Good afternoon, Ian. It's
Hello.
great talking to you. Before we get into our conversation, can I actually ask you to introduce yourself for the benefit of our viewers?
Of course, yeah, I'm Ian Ayling. I've grown up in a business career that's encompassed all sorts of marketing and business development, from British brands like Mr. Kipling and Pot Noodle, through part of life in data science, helping people like Tesco, and then more recently helping retail businesses like the Co-op and Wilco to meet their customers' demands and grow.
Brilliant. Brilliant. So let me ask the most obvious question. What is your take on well-being or your view on well-being?
I think in some ways it's another word for health, but in that broadest sense of what we mean by health. So well-being for me is the platform that allows the person to be the best of themselves. Yeah. Once you form good well-being, then you somehow take it for granted and operate at that higher performance level. If you take well-being at a lower level, if you're struggling for aspects of well-being, they start to dominate you and they start to erode. And so you look to just be well. So well-being is the sort of line by which we pass and move into performance.
Interesting, you talk about performance. So, in your opinion, do you think well-being has an impact on people's performance and productivity?
I think genuinely at one end of well-being, where well-being isn't happening, it's crippling and you know, to one extreme, someone can't even get out of bed. There sort of ends up with an aspect of mental health and distress and anxiety. And you then go to all the aspects of creating good well-being, and you create a situation where a person is performing and many people are performing. They form a team which is performing. And that performance itself starts to enhance well-being, and well-being then starts to enhance performance. So you see that sort of multiplicative effect that goes with well-being. So no, undoubtedly, it's sort of if you were to draw the line, it would go here, and then it would gradually go like this. There's sort of, you've got to pass a line and then move in. I think as you keep going, it accelerates as well-being goes. So yes, 100% tied to performance.
You talk about well-being. Are you just talking about the health perspective? Because I mean that's the initial impression I got. Then you talked about mental well-being. So
Okay. Now
what
I'm
is your
taking health
definition of
as its
well-being?
broadest sense. I hope that as a society we've moved past health being whether my lungs work. I think it's whether I work, whether I am in a good state, whether my brain, my heart, my lungs, my gut, every bit of me works is what, and how I work with other people. So now I take well-being that broadest sense of health. Yeah, it's the
Okay.
function of me.
So it's not. So you are taking the well and the being that basically
Yeah,
as an entity.
yeah,
So it's not
and
the I, it's the me or the ecosystem system.
that's it. Yeah,
Interesting.
and well-being
Now,
leads to well-doing, I guess, in what you're saying. Yeah,
yeah, okay. Now, when I actually look at or talk to organizations, I come across organizations across the spectrum. Like there are organizations that have a well-being strategy in place, to some who do it like basically, okay, let me have a mental health first aider. Let me do this. And some basically think equate well-being to offering employee perks. Now, it's all done with good intentions. I'm not questioning the intention.
yeah,
But then, what is the impact of all this from a strategic point of view? If you're actually looking at it from a holistic strategic point of view, yes, having a big picture is good, and then for having something at this end is also good. But where do you draw the line? Do you
yeah.
really go into it before you act, or you act because this being a very tricky area
Yeah.
to actually work? What is your view on that?
Yeah, I think high-performing companies and high-performing teams do things naturally and intuitively, and then codify it afterwards. I think there are plenty of things where, when we look at somebody we admire and we try and work out how to do what they do, then it's slightly more stilted. So a company can have a well-being strategy because it thinks it should have a well-being strategy because it's heard having well-being strategies make a difference. A company that has and finds its true purpose truly has some sort of humanity built into its ecosystem, why it offers what it does to customers, why it employs people in the way it does, why it works with suppliers in the way it does. Those that have that more natural thing will find they are doing well-being practices. And then what they might want to do is then codify their well-being practice into something that goes beyond the individual, so it goes beyond the HR manager responsible or the operations director accountable or whatever. It's something that just allows best practice to spread, particularly as you get into large organizations. So yeah, I think you have to look at, as you say, I think everyone does start with good intention. There are arguably some people who start with the intention of not being caught, not doing the wrong thing, and those are fearful intentions. But I think if you have those hopeful intentions that life can be better, why shouldn't we, how can I help, then you get into making good practice. And I guess the way you build it is also probably typical of that. So if you hear and have a good listening system as a business, because you know who you are, you know what you're doing, and you know how you're trying to all improve it, then you'll hear things that advance well-being and things that limit well-being, and you'll naturally build those in as a response. If you don't, you might look for symbolism. It's like a bad government. You come and go, right, let's put a gym in because it's a good idea, because well-being is about physical fitness, and let's get a gym in. And then nobody uses the gym. And so that was a waste of money and a waste of time. It was a good intention, badly executed. If you truly understand that, I've got a bunch of people who are having to get up super early to go to the gym because we haven't got one here. And actually, if we had one here, then they could get here, relax, be more comfortable, avoid the rush hour traffic. What a great idea. That really does meet it. So any way you can know that is to actually know who you're trying to create well-being for.
Okay, so that brings in two different thoughts, Ian. One is the need for an organization to understand individual well-being needs rather than use a one-size-fits-all approach. That's one. I've got a question on that. The other question I have is, given that the market for well-being is actually growing, last year I think it was 40 billion or something, and I don't know if you read the latest report published by Jacobs. They said it is costing UK economy 2.5 billion per day, well-being, or the lack of it. Perceived lack of well-being is impacting that. Putting a gym or providing fruits is a start, but then because of well-being being the buzzword now, and because everyone, probably people are genuinely caring, or people want to seem to be doing the right thing, they are investing money in that.
Yeah.
Right? So there's basically a question of wasted resource when you put a gym or provide fruits or whatever. So the question I have is, at the moment money is going out very easily, despite other things getting cut. Do you think it is wrong to actually question the return on investment on well-being initiatives?
No, absolutely no, because it's a missed opportunity as much as anything. So the cost of that gym might not be about the cost of the gym mechanically. It's actually the cost of the fact that it isn't helping the well-being of the employees and therefore isn't helping performance. So it's the opportunity cost, not the reality cost, which means that, and the way you look out for missed opportunity is to measure some sort of return. So of course it's sometimes hard to make cause and effect. It doesn't mean you shouldn't stop trying to make at least correlation, where people have had access and have fulfilled themselves around this. Maybe there's a way to do that. So I think it would be specific how you try and measure it, but I do think that the bravest thing for people to do is to recognize that work itself is a compromise anyway, and somehow it's trying to find the sweet spot behind the person being responsible for themselves, so we're all responsible for our well-being, and the company knowing that it's asking that person to do something for it. I've signed a contract with you, you're going to give me so many hours or whatever. And the healthiest contracts, I think, where somebody signed up to say, you're going to try your best in a fair and supported way, and we're going to achieve something good together. So you're going to give me growth, or you're going to give me answers, or you're going to give me attendance, whatever it is, it's sort of, and I think sometimes we get confused with that. We feel like we're almost signed up to an open prison contract. I will attend for 9 hours a day, yeah, and that's why you pay me. Well, and it isn't really. Yeah, I was paid because they thought I might know about our customers better, or they thought they might know how to tell them in an ad, or they thought they might help make the pricing better so that more people bought it. Those are the reasons why I was employed, not in order to just serve time in an office. So I think that there is a sweet spot where we shouldn't confuse personal responsibility and that basic employment contract with the responsibility for the company to do their best for the individual and the responsibility for the individual to do their best for the company. Those two, that mutualism of those two things, end up in well-being. So now how do you measure that? Good question.
That's, I'll probably have to answer that separately. But what the other thing I was also keen to hear from you is, we spoke about, understanding individual needs. I mean, I've had people saying, oh, we actually thrown a lot of measures, and whatever gets picked up, we support those initiatives. That's basically, I would say it as a spray and pray, isn't it?
I mean, done well, that's good. If you argue that government should respond to the people and we need a better train line across the north of England, then put a better train line in the north of England. That's a direct response to doing something valuable and good. And it doesn't affect the people in the south, so not everyone benefits. But those people who get it, it benefits a lot. So there are constant questions between what might be valuable, to whom might it be valuable, and what do you do? So I, as I say, going back to the gym example, if there's real evidence that it will benefit a number of people, then yeah, it comes back to your question and priority methods and so on. But of course, it should be a strong consideration, and that one action then will cover a lot of people. And from a management investment point of view, it feels good to only manage a few things, because for our own well-being, we can only probably manage so many things. But it's when the tyranny of the majority comes in, when, well, we've taken a vote and everyone says it should be this, and then actually that unfortunately doesn't allow for people who don't think that's a good idea. I think that's a really interesting thing. And in which case, you've got the everyday responsibility of management and leadership that has to sit around that. You don't have to just do things. I think you sometimes just have to be present. And the very first thing is to recognize that the person in front of you matters, and that you know who they are, and you know what they do, and you know that they're struggling, or you know that they're on fire and they're doing really well, whatever. That care and attention that is all should have been demanded of management and leadership is the clue.
So it's basically not just the leaders at the top, the managers have to be, I mean, when you say this, I'm thinking, okay, if every manager talks to their team properly and gets an insight of what the team needs are, how each individual feels, then customizing a well-being initiative for the individual, and then it can be rolled up to create a corporate well-being initiative would be easier. So it's all about that conversation, real understanding with the individual team member. That's one thing, Ian. The other thing is, as a society, we are all trained to be successful. We really appreciate success. And we say, that's what we need to do, blah, 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 and all that stuff. When people fail, we actually don't treat them properly, right? And if we treat people who have bounced back from failure as heroes, say, oh, it's not how hard you fall, how many times you get up, and all that stuff, which is inspirational for a movie like Rocky. Real life, we all fail, and not everyone is resilient, right? So as a society, should we not be thinking about training people, or as a corporate, should they not be training people to cope with failure? I know corporates are meant to succeed, but then this is in your own head. If you can't process failure, then when things actually go wrong, it's going to have serious well-being impact, not only for the organization, but also for the individual. So what's your view on this?
Yeah, no, very true. And I think to build on your point, it's trained in our school system. Fundamentally, we are set up to be winners or losers at the end of our school system. And if you were the loser, what do you do about it? And it's only measuring one aspect of you. So I think an old HR director used to say you can either win or learn, and I like that. I think there are points at which there are recognisable forms of success that we can all see, and those aren't the issue. The issue, as you said, is the point where you didn't win, where you did fail, and yet if we didn't fail, if we didn't take those risks, we wouldn't progress as a society. We wouldn't learn. So it goes to the degree to which failure is something that is a learning process, or failure is something which is a personal crisis. And the more we can make it a learning process, the better it is. If you do the same thing wrong 15 times, there's probably a problem. But if you do something wrong a couple of times because you were trying to get to somewhere, then what was the Edison light bulb? 5,000 of them, and then he got there. So there's a point at which I think just in all of it, know why you are doing it, and if still the why is a good reason, then keep going after it. So I think it ties into the fact that the moment businesses, because of the improving governance standards of businesses, have taken on more risk and audit committee, processes, and more risk management, health and safety management, all those sort of things. They're really good at watching out for hazards, not just risks now. But I'm not sure we've got the positive language of hazards, which is actually experiment, test. And in those things, because we're defining something that hasn't happened before, they have to fail. They have to go wrong. So maybe we just need to move the language around, and maybe what's the positive of a hazard? What is that? And it's at the moment we've only got the word opportunity, which doesn't sound that good.
No, I guess probably that as a language, that's the limitation, isn't it? So, but then you're right. Fundamentally, language is a tool to help us think, not only communicate, because we form our structures, perceptions, everything is formed by language. Yeah. So at a deeper level, as you rightly say, we have health and safety department. There is no opportunities department or failures and learnings department. You have learning development, which basically tries to train you, coach you on something, rather than allows you to, so I guess there is a philosophy that needs to be embraced as a result, isn't it? Yeah. Because fundamentals change in how organizations operate. Now, I mean, you have been talking to various companies, you've been part of various companies. What do you think is missing or is amazing from a well-being perspective happening these days? I would like to hear both sides of the coin.
Yeah, there's it's interesting, that language bit, because I think there's what's missing is probably the chance not to know. I think that people will talk about well-being, and because they're not sure about it, they'll want to quickly get to an answer so that they can feel comfortable with it. Whereas in reality, we're all struggling to work out what well-being is, how to help ourselves and how to help others. So I think all round, a bit of permission to not know would be a really good thing. A bit of permission to start with questions rather than find answers would be really good. So that, and that leads then into things like stigma. So where you've got points of failure you talked about, I think one of the points of failure that we know is on the agenda right now is mental health. We've got many examples of people suffering from regular anxiety and depression in society. And those cost the country a lot of talent waste. So what would be the chance to remove the stigma around that and have a better conversation when somebody is struggling and isn't at the point of success but is at the point of challenge, and help them get back to form? And what would you learn from going through that process that would help the winner, that would help the person who's on the top of their game, and so on? So I think that that inquiry is the thing that we can most benefit from in trying to advance this subject.
Okay. I'm mindful of the time. It's been really interesting having the conversation with you, Ian. One last thing I would like to ask is, three things that you would like to say that companies could do from a well-being perspective. If you have to advise someone listening to this or viewing this video, top three things that they could focus on, should focus on from a well-being point of view.
Yeah, okay. I think the first is view performance in a balanced way. So balanced scorecards have been around for some time, but don't set just financial goals around performance. Set complementary indicators around performance, whether those be for customers or team member well-being or operation efficiency. Find a way to bring a rounded picture so that the conversation is more rounded. Have a philosophy that everybody matters. Yeah, just start off from a diversity and inclusion performance management point of view that yes, the company has standards and values and expectations, but everybody turns up to work trying their best unless something's got in the way. So just have the inquiry to understand about the individual and where they are. And then the third would be, to your point about experiment and failure, is that don't be afraid to try. You know, why should we say that failure is okay if then people are getting things wrong in well-being? Well, they are, because they're trying and their intentions are good. So I guess look out for a way to think about how you evaluated what you thought your well-being initiative was about, and then be honest with yourself about how much progress you've made. Don't treat it as a success or failure. Treat it as a percentage towards progress.
Brilliant. So you're saying be balanced, be inclusive, experiment a lot.
That sounds perfect. Sounds better than me.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot, Ian. Take care.
Right. Thanks, Ram. Bye.
Bye.